Hey, honey,
Yes, Barry?
let's get out of here.
Where are we going?
Where do we always go?
Fascina el viento, este ritmo de palmas, sin naturaleza, hasta encontrar la playa. Por eso grito al mundo, yo soy de Puerto Vallarta. Samba de Puerto Vallarta, noche de arrullo en el mar. Samba de Puerto Vallarta.
Hello, fellow travelers. Welcome to this episode of the Puerto Vallarta Travel Show. I'm your host, Barry Kessler, and I am just so happy to be introducing you to my favorite vacation destination. Maybe it's even yours, and that's Puerto Vallarta, Mexico. The music you're listening to is performed by Alberto Perez, and Alberto is the owner of the Lapa Lapa group of restaurants. Those are the Lapa Lapa, Puerto Vallarta's oldest restaurant on the famous Los Muertos beach, and the El Dorado Restaurant Beach Club right next door. So you can enjoy that fantastic view of the Los Muertos Pier, all lit up at night in beautiful colors, or during the day in its grand splendor for breakfast, lunch, or dinner. Seated with your toes in the sand right at the water's edge. It's so romantic. It's so Puerto Vallarta, my friends. This week we have a real treat. We got a pair of expats. Both of these expats are from Seattle, Washington, as a matter of fact. They found each other in paradise, not as lovers, but as a musical team. Joan Huston, who happens to be the cousin of the Whitney Houston, is the vocalist, and Bob Bruneau, who founded the Vallarta Gay Men's Choir, accompanies Joan on piano. They perform mostly at Incanto. We're going to talk with them soon. They are so cute. But before we get to Joan and Bob, let's see what's happening this week in Puerto Vallarta, the 14th of August, 2022. Enrique, the owner of the Margarita Grill, and also the owner of the Merida Grill, both in the romantic zone of Puerto Vallarta, has gone missing, and he is unfortunately presumed drowned. Here's a report from notispациopv.com. It's dated July 31st. The 55-year-old surfer who owns a well-known bar in the romantic zone was reported missing during the storm that occurred on Saturday night. Civil protection elements continued to search for him. Shortly after midnight, the disappearance of a male who had entered the sea to surf and who had not been seen leaving was reported to the emergency numbers. The events took place in Playa Los Burros by Basilio Badillo during the storm that hit the port on Saturday night. Civil protection personnel and firefighters from the lifeguard area went to the place indicated in the report and met with some people who made the call for help. The reporters pointed out that the 55-year-old male usually goes surfing every night, but on this occasion they did not see him leave, and there was no sign that the male had returned to his home or to his business, since he owns a popular bar in the romantic zone. The lifeguard personnel, as well as elements of the Secretary of the Navy from the search and rescue group, began a search operation for the male without any success so far. And I have a link to that rather sad report from Notispациopv in the show notes. I was introduced to Enrique by our friend, Felipe Reyes. Felipe is the masseuse and long-distance runner who I've had on the show. Felipe, I used to see Felipe posting Facebook posts of him eating over at Margarita Grill quite often, and so I asked him if he would introduce me to Enrique, and he did, and I recorded an interview with Enrique over at Margarita Grill, which I have not yet published, and that's, of course, why you haven't heard it yet. I spoke with Felipe about a week ago, and he knows stuff, but he didn't want me to say anything just yet. He shared with me, but he said, please hold off until we talk. So we're going to have a meal, and he's going to fill me in on what he knows and what I can share with you, and I'll share that with you. As far as the interview that I have with Enrique, I'm going to have to wait and just see, number one, if they find his body, and number two, if his family will approve of my posting the interview. So as far as the future for the Margarita Grill is concerned, and the Merida Grill, we're going to have to wait and see. Both restaurants are open as we speak. They just opened up a couple of days ago again, so there's that. Strange stuff, right? Anyway, more to come. I am so sorry to Enrique and to his family. Enrique was a really cool guy. I really liked him. And just so sad, such a young guy. And I won't have to wait long to see what's happening on the ground in Puerto Vallarta, because I will be returning there via CBX Cross-Border Express tomorrow. Actually, early this morning, I'm going to be heading downtown to catch a bus to take me down to the border. So I'll be down for about a week. If you don't know what Cross-Border Express is, I explained the whole process in a previous episode. I'll link that up to this blog post. Or just type in CBX to the search bar over at the bottom of a page, any page on my website, and it'll take you to the episode, or it'll take you to any episodes that mention CBX. It's actually a pretty good tool if you're looking for anything at all on my website. Basically, Cross-Border Express, if you just as a quickie, it's a facility. It's built right on the wall. It's the wall that separates Mexico and the United States. You can park. They have a big parking lot that you can pay to park in, or you can take a van or a bus, which is what I do. And it takes me right to the facility, which again happens to be built directly adjacent, on the wall adjacent to the Tijuana International Airport. You walk in there, you get your luggage weighed and ticketed, and then you print out your tourist card or your FMM. By the way, I'm going to get back to that FMM thing because there's something going on there. But anyway, you buy your pass that allows you to cross over a bridge from the Cross-Border Express facility over the wall and then down into the Tijuana Airport, where you check through customs and you do your immigration stuff before you are allowed then to enter the departure terminal of the Tijuana Airport. Now, just for a minute, real quickly, let's go back to that tourist card thing. I got a message from my buddy Chris, and Chris says to me, "Hey, Barry, we arrived yesterday in Vallarta to look at some investment properties, and they no longer give you the FMM card at immigration. Instead, they ask how long you're going to be staying in Mexico. Not sure how this works, but it's a big change for sure. They said this change started last week." So thank you, Chris. Thanks for that. I looked for something about this, and sure enough, I did find something on Facebook. It was posted by KL Mexico, and they say FMM pilot test. A pilot test has been started in Puerto Vallarta the past Wednesday, and it's been used in Baja California airports and Jalisco airports only as tests where FMM are not needed at the airport anymore. If this works, then it'll be mandatory in all of Mexico, as the main reason for this is to speed the entries at the airport, as mostly they're basically filling out the FMM forms by hand, while the airport makes lots of delays for the airport. So anyway, the article goes on to explain how the process is currently handled, as well as very specific directions for returning to Puerto Vallarta or returning to Mexico if you're holding a temporary or permanente residence card. That's all stuff that you really should know about. I have a link to that article in the show notes. Of course, you can find it at www.puertovallartatravelshow.com. So once again, thank you, Chris. Thanks for that heads up on that FMM. And I'm really looking forward to seeing how they're going to deal with that. And I'll find out tomorrow when I hit the border. I will be flying via Viva Aerobus once again. I like that airline. It is a discount airline, and so far, so good. They haven't done me wrong. They haven't canceled any flights yet either. I've had one delay, But so far, I mean, with all the flight cancellations and all the garbage that's going on in airports, in the States, I've been, knock on wood, I've been really lucky. No cancellations so far, Tijuana to Puerto Vallarta. We'll see. Anyway, it's going to be a long day, as usual. My wife, she drops me off in downtown Los Angeles in a lovely graffiti-crusted dark alleyway. If you've seen I've told you to look at the blog post to see the picture of that. I'll dig it up and I'll stick it in this one too, if you haven't seen it yet. It really is. It's lovely. It's just a scene out of a movie for sure. Anyway, the alley is located in a place which is surrounded by homeless in tents, and she can be dropping me off there at 1 a.m. Then I've got 3 hours to the border. So I'll be at the Tijuana airport by about 4 o'clock for a 8:30 flight, which then lands 2.5 hours later, hopefully, if it's all on time, in Puerto Vallarta. Add 2 hours for the time difference, and I get to Puerto Vallarta by about 1:30 in the afternoon. So it's brutal. It's a brutal day. I try to sleep on the plane. I try to sleep on the bus. But it's not always that easy, as you know. And, well, you don't know. I don't fall asleep that easily. Does it sound like I'm complaining? No, not really. But I understand that I do have a welcoming committee waiting for me at the Tijuana airport. This is from Bloomberg Online. My timing is so good. Mexico flies troops to the busiest U.S. border city after gang attacks. Masked gunmen block roads in Tijuana with burning buses. A wave of violence targeting civilians and businesses spreads. This article again from Bloomberg by Michael O'Boyle, dated yesterday, August 13th. Hundreds of Mexican military troops were flown into Tijuana on Saturday to beef up street patrols after armed gangs hijacked and burned at least a dozen vehicles in the border city, the latest in a wave of attacks hitting civilians across the country. U.S. consulate staff were ordered to shelter in place on Friday evening, but no one was reported injured in the Tijuana hijackings that snarled traffic across the city and temporarily blocked access to one of the world's busiest border crossings. Some 350 National Guard troops were flown in on Saturday to reinforce thousands of federal troops already in the state of Baja California, Daily Reforma reported on its website. Simultaneous hijackings occurred in 4 other cities in Baja, and authorities arrested at least 17 people, Milenio TV reported. Tijuana is home to the San Ysidro El Chaparral ports of entry and the busiest U.S. border crossing. The disruptions in Tijuana followed attacks against businesses and civilians further along the border in Ciudad Juarez and the central state of Guanajuato the past week. The wave of violence now spreading to key manufacturing corridors is a major challenge to President Andrés Manuel López Obrador's security strategy. While so-called narco blockades have become common in states like Guerrero and Michoacán, where the Jalisco New Generation Cartel pioneered attacks on civilians over the past few years, it was the first time such tactics had been widely deployed in major border city of Tijuana, said Vanda Fila Brown, an organized crime expert at the Brookings Institute. An escalating battle between Jalisco and Sinaloa cartel for control of the region could jeopardize new foreign investment, she said. Tijuana has seen horrific gang violence in the past, but not such disruptions as directed at the general population. Companies are being affected. Foreign companies are being affected, Fila Brown said in an interview on telephone. It's blowing up in terms of people saying, hey, government, you gotta protect us. López Obrador's government has come under criticism for shying away from directly challenging criminal gangs, such as its release of drug lord Joaquin El Chapo Guzman's son in 2019, following unrest in Sinaloa after his capture. The government has deployed thousands of members of the National Guard across the country, giving the public the sense that the streets remain militarized, and although the homicide rate has fallen, it remains near record highs. Tijuana Mayor Montserrat Caballero, in a video message directed at the criminal gangs she blamed for the hijackings, said the city wouldn't shut down. We're not going to allow a single Tijuana citizen pay the consequences for those who didn't pay their bills, she said. We ask that you make the people who owe you pay up, not the families and citizens who work. In a separate press briefing outside a military base in the city, Caballero said that there were some 3,000 federal troops in the state that would help 2,000 Tijuana police maintain order. She stressed no civilians have been hurt yet. The problem is serious, but not that serious, she said. Several vehicles burned on Friday night, blocked roads in 2 cities in Guanajuato State. Mileniano reported. That's also where gangs on Tuesday torched 25 OXXO convenience stores owned by Fomento Económico Mexicano, SAB. And this article goes on, but you kind of get the picture, right? I have a link to that article in the show notes. So, yeah, I guess coming down from downtown LA and from all the homeless encampments and all that stuff to this current situation in Tijuana, I don't know, maybe it's actually an upgrade. We'll see. Anyway, I embedded a video of the soldiers arriving at the airport. They are there in their beautiful new crisp uniforms. They've got new equipment. Almost looks like the U.S. government found some gear that they hadn't already shipped over to Ukraine. But, never mind. A couple weeks back, we talked about a local reporter and journalist, Susana Carreño, who was brutally attacked, stabbed multiple times, and left for dead as she left an interview over at Ejido Vallarta. Susana is now out of the hospital. She is doing much better, and she thanks everybody for all of their support. She is currently under protective services, and I'll be following up with her to see if any charges are ever filed or if they ever catch the perps that stabbed her and attacked her. And, we'll be looking for these nasty people. Last week I was talking about setting up a donation page, if you remember, for a little Patreon page, maybe to raise some money for JR to help him out when things are a little slow and a little bit tight during low season and stuff. And I guess I should have asked JR, but he asked me in a very nice way, Barry, please don't do that. So anyhow, I'm holding off on doing that. I've actually received a few responses and a little money for JR from some of you listeners, so thank you for that. But he says, "Hey, no, I'm gonna be okay." So I will heed JR's wishes for him to hold off, for me to hold off on that donation page for him for now. Okay, but look, just buy a tour. Okay, go to vallartainfo.com and take a tour. Okay. All right, the last episode, I said stand by for location and time for the meet and greet, an open microphone meet and greet podcast where, as you know, and we get the best conversations and greatest ideas for places to visit, restaurants and places to eat at and stuff like that. And because it's the middle of August and we're in the middle of the tropics, I was in search of a cool spot, place to have a meet and greet podcast with that open microphone thingy and complete with the sunset and the air conditioning. And you know what? There's not a place like that. I thought about a place, maybe going on the beach, but you never can tell. You don't know if it's going to be raining this time of year. You can get a big old thunderstorm and just ruin everything. But there is a place that I would really love to have the meet and greet. And that is at a place called Restaurant San Lucas. So we're going to meet and greet before the sunset. It's going to be this Wednesday, August the 17th. It will be from 5 o'clock until 7 o'clock, so we're going to have a 2-hour thing. Sunset on Wednesday the 17th is at 8:30 in the evening, so we're going to have plenty of time to just take a walk down to Los Muertos Beach and see the sunset yourself, right? Just right there, watch it go sink down into the Pacific Ocean over the Bahia de Banderas. So assuming it's not, raining gatos y perros, you know what I mean? But anyway, Restaurant San Lucas is on the corner of Insurgentes and Lázaro Cárdenas. It is right across the street and upstairs from Pharmacia Guadalajara, the big one, right in the middle of town, right next to those taco stands, right over there on Lázaro Cárdenas. If you turn around and look across the street, there's a restaurant sitting on the corner. Nobody knows what it is. Go upstairs. That restaurant is called Restaurant San Lucas. It's one of my favorite little restaurants. Let me buy you a beer. Let me buy you some guacamole. And just, come upstairs and spill the beans about what you're doing in paradise. If you're a local charity, you want to tell us, about what you do, or maybe you have a favorite charity in town that you want to talk to us about, come and talk with us. If you own a business, you want to get the word out, well, don't be shy. Come on over. We don't bite. If you're a listener and you want to share your Puerto Vallarta experience with us, we want to talk with you for sure. So once again, Wednesday, August 17th from 5 to 7, over at Restaurant San Lucas, Lázaro Cárdenas 355, right on the corner, and upstairs, right on the corner of Insurgentes and Lázaro Cárdenas. Let me buy you a beer, let me buy you some guacamole, and then you tell us your Puerto Vallarta story. Check the show notes if you need further directions, but hey, you got a smartphone, right? Of course you do. Type in Restaurant San Lucas, Puerto Vallarta, right there into your Google map, and just like magic, you're going to be right there. So I look forward to seeing each and every one of you who happens to be around and in town over at this meet and greet. It's always a huge thrill for me to see you all there, so I hope to see you there. Almost as thrilling as seeing you there is getting emails from you, and here's one from a listener Alan. Alan is writing in response to the last episode's story about listener Craig, who told me stories of danger and confusion. Remember that? Talked about his episode in Puerto Vallarta, which involved sex, drugs, rock and roll, and all that other stuff in paradise. And I asked you what you thought. Does Craig's story seem a little bit too racy for my sleepy little travel podcast? Anyway, Alan writes, Hola, Barry. As always, I'm very grateful for all the work that you put into your wonderful podcast. Thank you, Alan. And thank you for everything you do. On your latest podcast, you told us about an interesting series of events that Craig might be able to tell us about his story. I think it would be a very good thing for all of us to hear Craig's story. There are many hidden dark people, places, and dangers in PV that are unknown to most of us. Most of us probably get lulled into a false sense of security when in PV because nothing of significance has ever put most of us in grave danger. I hope you choose to share Craig's story. Who knows? It may just help one person from repeating his mistakes. Thanks again. Really appreciate you, Alan. And I appreciate you, Alan. Thank you very much. So we got one vote for sex, drugs, and rock and roll. Woohoo! Kidding. Alan, thank you for your input. Thank you for your email. I was actually in touch with Craig yesterday, and I will be talking with him while I'm in Mexico. So stay tuned. We'll see what we can do to get his story on the podcast. Also, another email from listener Heather, who just returned from her first trip to Puerto Vallarta. Now, listen to what this couple did. Remember, this is their first time, okay? Subject is, loved our first trip to PV. I started listening to your show a couple months prior to going to Puerto Vallarta. My partner and I went at the end of June, early July. Well, you like it hot now, don't you, Heather? And we had an amazing time. We checked out some of your suggestions, and I wanted to tell you about a couple of things that we did that you might want to explore further on your show. I haven't listened to all of your shows, so maybe you've already talked about this. One of the things we did was to visit the Mama Lucia tequila distillery. I forgot what road it's on, but it was on our way towards Boca. By the way, that is in Mismaloya. And let's see, she continues, it's a family-owned business, and the young man who gave the presentation was very informative, friendly, and a lot of fun. We got to taste all sorts of different tequilas, and he didn't pressure us to buy anything. It was just because their tequila was awesome that we bought some. Then he recommended a really cool restaurant up the hill called Tony La Choza. It was in his little village area. We never would have found it had he not recommended it. It was kind of a house tucked away in the hills, but it was a charming place with white tablecloths and all. The menu was a platter of fish, seafood, and meat, and you got to choose your meal by looking at the platter of fish and that fresh food. Their service, the ambience was excellent. There were 3 of us dining there, and the drinks and all 3 meals, I think it was like $60 plus tip. It sounds great. We stayed in the romantic zone, and a couple restaurants that we really enjoyed were Margarita Grill and Cafe San Angel. We didn't have any bad meals. Every restaurant we went to had really tasty food. We also like Ophelia's Wine Bar. Okay, make a note, you guys. We used Eric, the Uber driver. Thank you. The one that you interviewed a while back. He picked us up at the airport and stopped at a grocery store for us on the way to our Verbo. He was super nice and informative. We Ubered everywhere, sometimes with Eric, sometimes not. We also hired a private panga to take us all around the bay. We stopped to snorkel a couple of times, and snorkeling at Los Arcos was phenomenal. They also took us to Yalapa for lunch. If anybody wants his contact information, let me know. Okay, so I will get that, and I'll put that in the show notes just as soon as I hear back from Heather. All in all, we just want to go back, and we're thinking about possibly retiring there. Your travel show helped a lot in planning our vacation, so I wanted to say thanks, and adios, Heather. So, thank you, Heather. Thanks very much. Now, did you hear everything that she said? Did you hear that? Heather proves that with proper planning and proper wherewithal, you can make the most of a visit, even as a first-time visit to this city or any old town, right? But it takes planning, and it takes willingness to break free of your comfort zone, get out of your resort or whatever, and get out there and be adventurous. You'll have a great time just like Heather and her partner did. So good for you, Heather. Thanks for listening, for sharing all those experiences and those great places with us. Now, I've heard of Tony's La Choza. Like I said, it is in Mismaloya. It's across the street from the beach. So I also have heard about that tequila tour as well. One of these days, pretty soon, I got to get over there and see what that's all about. Especially go see Tony, because he's been there a long, long, long time. Anyway, that's how it's done. That's how you play the game. Thank you so much for your email, Heather. I really appreciate that. Now, I promised that I would talk about Mexico's problems. They're having some problems with the U.S. and Canada. And they're having a little bit of a scuffle, a little bit of fight. But I'm going to wait till next week to talk about those things. So let's get to our interview, shall we? I met my next guests through Polly, my buddy Polly. You've heard Polly's story if you listen to the podcast. And as you know, she's great. And Joan Huston, one of the people who you're going to be hearing from, I had already met her before. And then I met her friend Bob at a rooftop party in the Cinco de Diciembre neighborhood at Joan's house. Beautiful place overlooking the bay. And at this party, there were a bunch of Joan's friends from Seattle and the Seattle area. And they were either living in Puerto Vallarta or they were visiting from there. They were doing, both, right? So the fact is that I met a bunch of people who were once just pasty-faced Seattleites, now browned and tanned by the Mexican sunshine. And it was great to see a lot of these people and to meet them. And it was there that I introduced myself to Bob. After Joan said to me, Barry, talk to Bob. He's the one that makes all the appointments and organizes all this stuff. He'll set you up, and I'll be there. So I pitched the podcast thing to Bob, hoping Bob would say yes, that they might be interested in talking with me someday. And, well, I guess my abilities to persuade a potential guest are still sharp because I managed to get that interview the following week. And when I got to Bob's condo over on Olas Altas, I reached into my backpack, and I kind of was startled because I realized that I only had 2 microphones instead of 3. I usually have 1 microphone for each person. So I asked Bob and Joan if they would, share 1 mic and go ahead and just pass it back and forth, and that I would do the editing. I'd take out any pauses and sounds of, the shuffling of the microphone going from hand to hand. And I think I did a pretty good job of editing, if you say so myself. But there might be a couple little spots where I just couldn't get it perfect. So if you do notice that, that's why it happened, and I do apologize in advance. These 2 are just so good to listen to, so don't worry about that, okay? So let's go right now to just a lovely condominium situated just a block away from all the action in Puerto Vallarta, in the romantic zone of Puerto Vallarta. Let's meet Joan Huston, singer, and Bob Bruneau, piano accompanist and song coach, entertaining folks, mostly at Incanto. We know where that is. It's over on Rio Quale, over there on the Quale and Insurgentes. So let's go to Olas Altas and meet Bob and Joan in Puerto Vallarta, Mexico. Joan, Bob, thanks for coming on the show today.
Oh, thank you for having us.
It's good to be here.
Tell us a little bit about yourself. You want to start, Joan, where are you from, and what was your path that led you to Puerto Vallarta?
Well, I'm from Seattle, Washington, and I've been coming down here with friends on vacation since about 1996 or 7, and I fell in love with it because I had lived in Hawaii. I was thinking about when I retired to move back to Hawaii, but I came down here, and my heart was here. And about in 2010, my godson's father had moved down here and said, I'm coming up to Seattle, and I'll give you 1 month to get your stuff packed up, and you're coming back. And I did. And I've been here now 11 years.
Oh, wow. Okay. And you made that move from
Seattle.
From Seattle, but you were in Hawaii, you said?
Yeah, Honolulu.
Oh, okay. All right. Bob, what was your path here?
Wow, that's a long story, but I'll try and make it quick. I was playing in a band back in 1971, and we were called The New Day, based out of Seattle, and we worked the whole the western states, Texas too. And our very first gig was with a Canadian promoter, and we got a gig down in Acapulco playing at the Marriott Hotel right on the Costera. And it was an extended job, about 2.5, 3 months. And, I was really loving Mexico. I had just come out, fell in love when I was there. And I fell in love with Mexico. There were a lot of things about it I didn't like about Mexico, that is, but I kept coming back. And the vocalist and I used to return back to Acapulco through the 70s, seeing old friends, that kind of thing. And then in 85, I finally made it to Puerto Vallarta to try something new. Oh. And the rest, they say, is history. I mean...
Well, in 85, I remember 85. Those were fun times in Puerto Vallarta.
Oh, yes.
Did you make the move in 85?
No, I didn't make the move.
To move here?
In 85, I went from being a musician. Well, you never lose being a musician, no, but I went into real estate in 85, and I vacationed in Vallarta all through the 80s and 90s. And it was in the late 90s I realized that this is where I wanted to retire, Puerto Vallarta. And in 98, my mother passed. It was in December. I already had a flight booked to come here 2 weeks past that. So I came anyway. I didn't go out. I didn't do my usual messing around the way I normally did. Yeah. And I went looking at real estate, and the house that we're sitting in is the house I found, the 5th house on the first day of my real estate search. And I bought it.
Wow. Well, you found a really nice place in a perfect spot in Puerto Vallarta, I think. Kind of out of the noisy area, but right in the action.
Exactly. Our bedroom is on the backside, and normally it's quite peaceful back there.
Yeah. Wow. All right. So you got here at the end of the 90s, just the beginning of 2020. So you were here for Kenna.
No, I wasn't,
No?
believe it or not, because I was still in Seattle coming back and forth from 2000 to 2004. In the year 2000, late, after the first remodel was done on this house, I met my partner, Gerardo. And so in order to keep that relationship going, he came up to Seattle in the summers, and I came down here in the winters. For a few weeks, not to kill my real estate career or anything,
Right, yeah.
but it was, that's how I transitioned. In 2003, I sold the boat. In 2004, I sold the trophy house in Seattle, and that's when I moved permanently down to Vallarta.
Right.
Joan, when did we meet?
I think it was in 2000. I remember I was with my godson's father, who was a friend of Bob's, and you were also his real estate agent, I believe. And this man comes walking down with this little dog, and somehow, and I don't know how, because I don't remember telling him, he found out that I could sing. And the next thing I knew, by 2001, he'd taken over my singing life. I mean, literally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Really.
I'd come down and we'd perform at Garbo's on the, maybe 2 or 3 nights every time I came down. And then when I moved down here, within 6 months, he had me.
Wow.
I mean, literally had me.
Yeah. Well.
Managed me, took over my life. But it's been fun. I've enjoyed every moment. And I've learned a lot from him, too, so that's good.
So he found out that you could sing. So how long have you been singing?
Well, I mean, literally, I've been singing, as my brother would say, ever since I opened my mouth. But I've sung in various places around the world, but usually it was like for benefits, or we'd be someplace and there'd be a band, and one of my friends said, "Oh, let her get up and sing," and I did it. But I mean, prior I was a news reporter for NBC, and then I began to lose my eyesight, so I became the area director for the North United Negro College Fund. And then when I retired from there, again, I decided to move down here. And again, Bob decided that what I should do is sing.
Yeah.
And so I've been doing it. What have we been doing it now for how many years? About, 8 years. And it's been fun.
All right. So you worked up in Seattle for was it NBC?
For King Television.
Was that NBC or ABC? What was that?
NBC.
For NBC Television.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah.
What was that like? Because that's you're going from like busy world, right, to this. I mean, how did that go? What was the transition like for you?
Well, the first year was difficult because I was a very busy world. But then after a year, my life got busy down here. And, you begin to meet people. You get involved in certain projects and things. And again, with the performing, because there's rehearsal, and then there's the performance, and then there's promotion. And as a matter of fact, 2 years ago, because I was one of the actors that helped open Act 2 theater. So couple of years there, I would be doing the show with Bob, and then I'd have to run over to Act 2 to be on stage by 7:30. And then at 10 o'clock at night, remember, I'd start rehearsing another show. That one year was Chicago. It's exhausting. So I have not been bored down here.
Oh, my gosh.
At all.
No way. All right.
No,
so tell me, Bob, tell us a little bit about your show that you have, what you do with Joan.
What do I do with Joan?
Yeah, what do you do with Joan? Because she says you took over her life, so I want to hear about this.
Well, I kind of rake her over the coals a little bit. Joan, support that tone with some more breath. Joan, let's warm up first. Joan, you're forgetting your lyrics. Keep working on those lyrics. Well, in Joan's favor, let's go back. She actually kind of tapped me on the shoulder. Her good friend Rhonda Padmos, who's a pianist in town with her husband, who's a musician, suggested, because they were looking for a musical director for a play that what is now Act Two turned into be. One of their very first plays, and I think their first musical, was Best Little Whorehouse in Texas. And it was performed at the original Boutique Theater, which is over by, if you know, a bit east of us, across the street from a car wash and next door to a fish taco stand, if that gives you a little local color. At any rate, Joan suggested, well, Bob Bruneau, he's a musician, and I think he's kind of leaving his real estate career down in Vallarta, so let's see if he could do it. So they had me become musical director of the show. And Joan was in that very show.
Yeah, whole other story. There was another woman who was going to be playing the part, that Queen Latifah, the prison warden. And this one, I guess, she was a white woman, so this one decided, I've got the real McCoy, a black woman who can play the part. And suddenly I got conscripted, literally, into that show.
Well, yes, moving right along. In the play Best Little Whorehouse of Texas, the maid at the whorehouse was a black woman, so it worked out very well. It worked out, at any rate. So from that, Joan asked me if I would give her vocal coaching. And I said, gosh, as a music major, I was always working with instrumentalists.
Right.
And I haven't been, in terms of vocal, that wasn't my major. But I said, I'll give it a try. And so I worked with her several months, and then we did a show now and then at Act Two in the Red Room. Danny let us perform there 3 times, maybe 3 shows. And Bob Price up at the Botanical Gardens would ask us to come up and donate an hour of music, and he'd give us lunch.
Wow,
well,
what a deal!
Yeah, that's how it started.
So that was like that was your first adventure, your first foray into voice instruction.
Yeah, Best Little Whorehouse was actually the very first time I'd ever worked with singers and got them singing their parts correctly and all that. And then with Joan, we worked together to get her range wider, because she had a pretty limited range in the beginning, and getting her pitch. She has good natural pitch, but when she goes up into the higher notes, she sometimes can go flat, so which is typical of a lot of singers. So we worked on that. At any rate, we played these little shows hither and thither, and then Incanto opened in was it 2015, 2016, and by March, April, I was talking to Tracy, the owner, about possibly having an afternoon show with Miss Joan Huston, cousin of Whitney Houston. And so he agreed, and can you believe it, Barry, but we are the longest running act that's been at
Act Two.
At Incanto. At Incanto, yeah. We're the longest running. We've been there since the first year.
Wow. All right, now, is this true? Are you a cousin of Whitney Houston?
Yeah, but her father and my father were related. People ask me like I grew up with her. It's like, no. I probably saw her once in my whole life, and I was probably 20, and she was a baby or something. So, yeah.
All right. So, but it kind of runs in the family, it seems like to me.
Well, actually, I think she gets her talent from her mother's side, because you've got Sissy Houston, Gladys Knight, Dionne Warwick. On my side of the family, you got, mostly boys, athletes. So I think I'm probably the only one who sings, really.
Well, your side of the family needed that. All right. So your act then that you do, Bob, you play the piano. You're accompanying with piano. How is that done?
Why are you laughing, Joan?
Yeah. It's more like I accompany him.
Oh, right. Well, how do I do it? Of course, I play the piano for her, but I also, and people probably don't even notice it, but ever since my band formed back in the late 70s, actually we formed while I was in the Air Force, and that's how I met the guys in my band. I've played bass as well as keyboards for the bands that I've played in. So with Joan, I play bass with my foot on a MIDI pedal system, and it enhances what we do by giving rhythm of like an upright string bass, because that's the sound that those pedals make. And so I'm able to I'm able to free up my hands to play more jazz-like behind her, as opposed to playing more like a barrel house pianist who has to play the bass notes with his left hand. So it's a subtle difference, and a lot of people aren't even aware that it's happening. They just know they like our sound. And it's those bass plus my ability to play jazz that combines to make a really nice, tight accompaniment.
And the fact that there's my voice.
Of
Should we
course, there
forget
is.
about that?
Yeah, don't.
Darling, we're talking about accompaniment right now.
You know, he does this sometimes on stage. I call it his PBS moments. You know, I sit there and while he, goes on these technical things about music. Finally, when it's over, we start our show again.
So, give me a typical lineup of the songs that you would sing.
Oh gosh, I always tell people I do the kind of music that Sarah Vaughan, Lena Horne, Ella Fitzgerald would do. So, like today we're rehearsing Moon Glow. That's Sunday. That's summer. What was some? Summertime, Stormy Weather. Those kinds of songs.
Yeah.
Sort of jazz related. And every now and then we'll do a couple of show tunes, which I like from Chicago or something.
Right.
Yeah. So that's what we do.
So that's what they should expect when they come and see you.
Yeah. Don't expect Aretha Franklin or Whitney Houston. Expect something more like, as I said, Sarah Vaughan.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. Excellent.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I don't think you're not a baby, sweet baby. No. That's that's Aretha. No, that's not your style.
What's really funny though, I did a show where I had to do the lyrics to Respect, and when there were some high school kids in the audience, and when they heard that music, they just assumed that I was a black woman, that I was going to come out there singing like Aretha, and I had to tell them, no, darlings, this is how I do. RESPECT, find out what it means to me. I'm talking to you. If you expect me to sound like Aretha Franklin, then, if I did, believe me, I'd be working somewhere else.
Yeah, she's got her own style, I must say. And the funny thing about Joan and I is that our voices are almost matched in pitch. She has a very low voice for a woman, and I have kind of an average low baritone voice for a man. And so she's singing along, and I can sing right along in the very same pitch as her, which is helpful sometimes because, being, sight challenged, she has, well, you are. It's a much, much harder time learning new music. And she doesn't think I sympathize with her on this, but I really do, because I know most singers don't memorize every song that they sing. Most singers nowadays keep an iPad clipped to their mic stand so they can read the lyric. Or some singers like myself, I have a book with the music in it, and as I'm playing the piano, I've got lyric in front of me and I can read. But Joan's out there, kind of floating in air, having to come up with all the lyrics all the time. So when she lets me, I join in. Sometimes she's not happy about it, but I persist.
But the thing is, it would be easier. But what Bob does is, like, rather than giving me a song list in advance so I can review it, then he gets on stage and he gets this wicked smile on his face and says, now, what are we going to sing? And he just throws songs out at me, and some I haven't sung in a while. And then I'm there trying not to perspire and remember all the lyrics, because, as he says, I'm blind in one eye and I can't see in the other.
Oh my goodness.
I love that joke. Well, hon, don't worry, because I can't hear in one ear and I'm deaf out of the other one.
Perfect match.
I think so. Yeah. Oh, wow. All right, so is it Incanto pretty much exclusively for you two for this show?
Well, what do you mean exclusively?
Well, I mean, normally that's where you perform.
That's every Friday 5 to 7. Now, when he's gone, sometimes I'll do other things, with other piano players. I have in the past, but I think in the future, when he takes the summer off, I'm taking the summer off, except for, as I said, a few, charitable benefits. Because I really, his head will swell, but I really do enjoy performing with him, and he is one of the best piano players in town. So I'm perfectly happy just doing what we do at Incanto, and at our ages, that's probably enough. Of course, he does a lot more, but for me, it's enough. I've got a garden and a dog to take care of.
Yeah.
Well, what do I do that's more? I've got a house to take care of.
Yeah, but you do more shows.
No, well, a few more, but not too much.
Yeah. What else do you do?
That's just what I'm trying to think of. She's talking about, yeah. I still work once in a while with a singer I've worked with from Seattle for 23 years, Arnaldo, who is a fabulous singer from the Philippines, but he immigrated to the United States in the late 80s with his family. And I met him singing in the Seattle Men's Chorus. And I tapped him on the shoulder one evening during one of my first rehearsals as I was singing with them, and said, you've got a fabulous voice, and I play pretty good piano. I think we should try doing a cabaret together. And that's what started it. And now Arnaldo has become kind of the head of cabarets in Seattle. Huh? He went to Yale and went to their cabaret conference where they, for 3 solid weeks, working with some of the finest singers in New York City and musical directors, and he learned so much. And we went back and performed in New York, and we did a retrospective of Eartha Kitt's music because she had passed the year earlier, and he won a Bistro Award. Well, I guess I won it too with him.
Right.
For that show. And it was so shocking to know after the show, thank God I learned this, that Daryl Waters, her musical director, was in our audience watching our show, which I was just so touched and moved by that.
Wow. So yeah, so you are going back and forth still doing that, yes?
Yeah, a little bit. He came down to Vallarta this December, and we did our show at the Palm, which is a bigger room, and also because the theater at Incanto is still not repaired from the floods of late 2021. And I'm a good friend with Mark Rome, the manager of the Palm. So this was our 20th anniversary show. Some 20 years ago, we started at the Palm when it was quite different. Now it's quite professional and sparkly and pretty amazing with some really top-notch talent.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I performed at the Palm, too. I mean, we did shows before Act 2 opened. We did, I played Magenta in the Rocky Horror Show. And what else? We did Sordid Lives, where I played the Olivia Newton-John part. I was like,
really?
Okay.
Wow.
Yeah. That was kind of fun. Yeah, exactly. But one of the things people don't realize is Bob also started the Puerto Vallarta Men's Chorus. He absolutely did. It was wonderful.
Yeah. All right. So are they still up and running?
Yes, they are. They're working with their fourth director, and they are preparing now for their spring concert. So I go to every concert that they've ever had since I left the organization in 2012.
Yeah, but you're like you're the guy that started the whole thing,
right?
Eh?
I started it. I always felt that Puerto Vallarta really needed to have something like the Puerto Vallarta a men's chorus and a gay men's chorus, because I've seen in my own life how a chorus can move hearts and minds. And our beginning preface that I did when I started this with a woman named Joyce Erickson, so she's really my co-founder, that in our mission statement, it was very important that it be stated that we exist to help change hearts and minds. So I worked very hard to make the chorus inclusive, and in our concerts, I worked hard to invite officials of Vallarta, the mayor, that sort of thing, to come to the concert, to know that we existed, so that people knew that there was more to gay life than just the gay bars. Not that there's anything wrong with gay bars. I love them. But there's more to it than that.
How many men in the choir?
Right now, I think there's somewhere between 15 and 25. I'm not sure.
When you had it was something like 40 men, at least 40.
Well, let's say I'm a promoter, okay?
Well, remember what he did to get you, Joan. Come on.
So, my whole idea around my gay life and my outreach is I was in San Francisco in the 70s, and that's pre-AIDS. And I'll never forget seeing posters that said "Out of the Bars and Under the Stars." And it was a promo for the Outdoor Adventure Club of San Francisco, and they had quite a big group. So in '81, being a skier, I started the Gay Men's Ski Club in Seattle, which is still going strong with hundreds and hundreds of members. They all know who I am. I also started in...
And all those clothes, they know who you are?
Yeah, they do. I started in '86. I wanted to participate in the Gay Games. They were the Gay Olympics, but the Olympic Committee decided that we weren't allowed to use that title. So I formed a soccer team, not knowing a thing about soccer. And we did go to San Francisco. We lost every game, but we had a ball doing it. So anyway, that's a bit of my backstory.
Wow, and you're quite you are an organizer. I mean, it is pretty obvious to me.
Yeah. Now, one of the things I have to say to the straight women out there, there are straight men here. Go north of the Vallarta Bridge, and you'll find the straight guys. Okay, downtown, it's a mix.
It's a crapshoot.
Yeah, exactly. So people say, "What do you do?" I said, "No, granted, they're here."
Yeah, they are. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah.
This is. Thank you for sharing that story. I like the inclusion. I like the we're here. That. I think that's fantastic.
You betcha.
Yeah.
And when I played piano bar in Seattle in the early 80s, it was awkward for me to always sing a song about she as opposed to he. But when I'm playing at the Crown Plaza in downtown Seattle, I felt like I really couldn't proselytize. Not that I was proselytizing from the stage, but, I couldn't speak my truth. Mm-hmm. So the thing I love in Vallarta, that we get to speak our truth. Joan speaks her truth from the stage. I speak my truth from the stage. So, and I think all the entertainers, the men, we don't change the pronoun. We sing about the men that we love, mm-hmm. which I think is an important element of Vallarta. It's very liberating and free here.
Yeah, indeed. Yes, indeed. It has been for a long time. Even since the 80s, So
it was in the 80s, as my husband Gerardo said, in the 80s it was kind of stylish to be gay here. And gay men hung out at that time at El Dorado, which was considered the hip place to be, both for the snowbirds who came down here and for the local gay population and the gay travelers. So I used to hang out there. But as Gerardo said, oftentimes the people, the straight folks would invite a few gay people to parties just because they added a little dash in color. But and probably a ton of acceptance, but still, I was here in those mid-'80s, and it wasn't out like it is now. Uh-huh. We had to be kind of careful.
Yeah.
I wonder if that's why I get invited to parties, because I had a dash of color.
No, I think they invite you because you're fun. All right, hey, let's... Well, we've spoken about Incanto. We spoke a little bit about the Palm, and we even spoke about Act Two. Those are pretty much the big theaters in town, right? Is there anything else that you have performed in? Other spaces that you've performed in?
Well, there's Culture. I've performed at Culture a few times, which is a nice sort of open bar. And I've sung at when I first started coming down here, I performed with Don and Rhonda at the River Cafe. As a matter of fact, I think the River Cafe actually was probably the first place I ever sang here in Puerto Vallarta, and I still love it. I don't necessarily perform there anymore, but it's one of my favorite places to go and take friends.
Yeah. Well, it's gorgeous. It's really pretty there, and they have entertainment for the evenings, right? Is that how they do that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
Let's go out. Let's move on from this, and let's go out into town. This is called the bonus round. This is where I ask you stuff because everybody travels on their stomachs, and everybody wants to know your places that you like to eat. And since you both live here, they really want to know the places that you eat because a lot of people go, "Hey, I don't go out and eat. I just cook." And I go, "You're lying to me." All right. So, do you want to start with? Let's start with breakfast places. Joan, you got a favorite breakfast spot?
Well, I really don't tend to go out to breakfast. That's more what Bob does. I do dinners.
Well, we've got some new places that have opened in the last year, and right now my breakfast place I'm really jonesing on is Casa Nicole, which is in Central, close to the river, and they've got incredible food, beautiful atmosphere, and reasonable prices. So how can you go along with the triple three?
Exactly. What do you eat when you go there?
Oh, my goodness. They've got an avocado toast that's to die for.
Really?
And they've got, get this, they've got mini waffles. So I don't feel like I'm eating quite so much. They're like maybe 2 inches in diameter, but they're thick like a Belgian waffle.
Oh, neat.
And they have fruit on them and all the other things that you would put on a waffle. And I like them so much, I went on Amazon and tried to order a mini waffle maker.
Really? Did they have any?
Joan, do you want a waffle machine 4 inches across that you could cook an egg on? So that's, I think Casa Nicole and Coco's Kitchen has an amazing breakfast as well, right?
Yeah.
So those two places for me, because other than that, we eat at home for breakfast.
Yeah, now me, dinner places, I think my favorite Mexican restaurant is Cafe de Olla.
Oh.
I used to have to, sometimes stand in line to get there, but then I made a connection, so I don't stand in line
No,
anymore.
of course not.
But, yeah, I love Cafe de Olla.
When you go there, what do you order?
Usually carne asada.
Okay.
I love their carne asada, which is delicious. I think my favorite Italian restaurant is La Piazzetta. Is that Piazzetta? That's how you pronounce it? That's good. And there's this wonderful restaurant as you're going towards Plaza Caracol. It's called starts with M. Is it the Magdalena? Best steaks in town. It's
Really?
wonderful.
Wow,
Absolutely.
I never heard of that. But you're first with the Magdalena with the steaks.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's great.
And
but-
that's over on Francisco Medina?
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly. It's good. But again, Cafe de Olla, and an odd thing. It's a gay bar, but women go there too. That has also very good pork chops and steaks. Is a little bar called Frida's. It has great food. The prices are right, and they bring in this special tequila. And you can. There's an artist named Mike Lakey who designs the bottles, and you can buy a bottle, and they'll fill it with their special tequila. It's the best tequila in town.
Wow.
Yeah,
really?
lots of people go there just
Frida's.
for the tequila. Yeah.
Now Frida's moved, right? They're on
Cardenas.
Cardenas now, right?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Yeah, actually, I was there not too long. I was there last night.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. There we go. Yeah, they got good hamburgers too.
Yeah.
Speaking of tequila, Joan Huston, during the show, I have to keep her on her toes. So if more than two tequilas come up, I start
Riding my ass.
yeah,
Riding my
try and hide them from you.
Yeah, but Jill, if you noticed over the last year, I usually only have one. Now, last week, because, he He had a song list. I didn't. So I had 1.5. So there.
Well, I imagine that, you could probably just back him up on the piano. Boom, 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 boom. When you're done, see this? Here we go. That's right. Bob, what about you? What kind of let's talk about lunch, because Joan, she doesn't eat breakfast. She doesn't eat lunch. All she does is eat carne asada. So what do you do for lunch?
What do I do? I normally eat home for lunch, make a sandwich, a little soup, unless I have a friend in town who I haven't seen, maybe from Seattle, because from Seattle, we so many visitors come down, and many of them are some of my old friends from my Seattle life. And so if they come down, we will go to someplace easy, like Salud, which is super healthy food. It's a block away from my place. Or if we want to get a little fancy schmancy, we'll go down to El Dorado. And if we want to walk even a little further, we go to Sapphire Beach Club, which is a lovely place. So that's what I do for lunch. For dinner, my favorite dinner place is Archie's Walk.
Really?
Yeah,
really?
I love
it's so close to you, too.
And it's so close. And Archie, he's been long gone, but his wife but the kids especially run the restaurant, and now the children are adults. And the thing I love about Archie's Walk, it's a wonderful menu of Pan-Asian food, and the menu and the recipes don't change, and the recipe hasn't changed. So you always know what you'll be getting, and the quality is always the best possible. So just a tip, if anyone wants to know, we always start our meals there with costillas, which are little baby ribs, and they're divunis. They're to die for. They're delicious. Yeah, so they're very, very good. By the way, Joan mentioned carne asada. In case your listening audience doesn't know what that is, asada is from the Spanish word asador, and that's a barbecue. So carne asada is cooked on a grill. So it's something I didn't know when I came to Mexico. So I thought they might like to know.
They do now. Listen to that. Now you know a tip.
No, it doesn't taste like barbecue.
No. Just it tastes like it hit the grill. Yeah.
Delicious.
Now, if you really want really good ribs, Rio Barbecue, which is south of here, southeast of here, it's wonderful. You're kind of out in the jungle, They usually have, on Sundays, great music and the best ribs. And when this is coming from a black woman, best ribs ever. They're excellent.
They are. I mean, you
can take your dogs and they can run around. You can take your kids and they can play in the river. It's wonderful.
Like giant dinosaur bones.
Yeah,
so big.
Huge, but they're very good.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, they're closing shop in May unless someone picks up the business. I don't know if they really.
Yes, we all love Rio Barbecue. I call it the Hollywood Bowl of Puerto Vallarta because the way that the sound hits that wall, and it's just amazing. It's just amazing.
Yeah, and the ribs are huge.
Yeah.
You're right, dinosaur bones.
All right, so if you were going to go away for a day, do you get a chance to leave town for a day and go have some fun? What would you do, Joan?
Well, usually what I like to do is I like going to Maito. And outside of Maito there's a little town right on the ocean that has the best oysters. Oh, It's wonderful. So, I like to get out to Maito, or I might go to Buceria because I have friends, and there's a wonderful little place. We go to Karen's place and have lunch. So I like doing that.
Yeah. How about you, Bob? What's your favorite day trip?
I love getting out of town. In fact, tomorrow I'm leaving after I take care of some morning business. My cousin, Peggy, lives in town here, and she's a cousin I didn't even know existed until a family reunion in 2005. Anyway, her and her husband bought a condo here. She's a Mexophile. She went to university in Mexico City, so she's totally bilingual. At any rate, we're going to drive out from Vallarta all the way out to Punta de Mita. And so for those who don't know, Puerto Vallarta is a very large bay, one of the largest in the world. And it's over 40 miles across, and it was formerly. It started out life in prehistoric times as a huge grand volcano. The way they talk about Yellowstone Park being part of a huge volcanic system, so was this bay. And when it exploded, it created the bay. And Puerto Vallarta is on the very far northwest edge of the bay. And it's an exclusive housing golf development. But it's also across the highway. It is a regular town. And there's a wonderful restaurant on the beach, a place that we actually like to go to a lot because they have a location in Vallarta, and it's called Barracuda. Yes. Amazing fish and shrimp, and they have some steak too. But Peggy and I are going to go out and have lunch there tomorrow. If we don't go there, sometimes we'll go east and go up into the mountains and go to a town called San Sebastian. And if we want to go south, we'll go to the Botanical Gardens for a lovely lunch, or further than that, El Tuito, which is a beautiful Mexican town, kind of up in the highlands. And El Tuito is on the way to Maito, where Joan was talking about. And the little town outside of Maito is called Tewa. Tewa Mixle, the full name. And they're noted for their oysters. They're so good and fresh.
Absolutely are. All right.
Well, you are so smart. You just know so much. I enjoy listening to you.
He was a realtor, so he has the spiel down really good.
Yeah, I'm impressed.
So, what about a 3-day trip? If you had like a long weekend, what would you do?
Oh, a long weekend. I would probably go to Lake Chapala. I love Lake Chapala. It's vibrant a lot, and then now it closes down early. So if you want some nightlife, you go over to Ajijic, which still closes a little early, but they have good food. But I love Lake Chapala.
Nice. And how long is that drive?
Well, usually, I've taken a bus. So this is about 6 hours. Yeah,
oh,
about
wow.
6 hours.
Wow.
Next time I go, I think we're gonna fly into Guadalajara and go from there, drive from there. But it's kind of a nice drive, do it at least once or twice, because driving from Vallarta to Guadalajara is really quite pleasant, I think.
Is it hard to find a place to stay in Chapala?
No. Some friends made our reservations, but what was so funny, my two friends that I went with, it was 3 girls and a guy, and we stayed right across from the American Veterans of Foreign Wars place. Now, that sounds weird, but I spent every day over there.
Really?
The food was fantastic, and it was filled with straight men of an appropriate age.
Bada bing. All right.
Oh, Joan.
Take notes.
Joan. You have to watch her. She's after every woman's husband that comes in Incanto.
Oh yeah, because I can borrow them, play with them, and then send them home to mama.
Right, exactly. I love that. Okay, ladies, take note. All right, the American Foreign Wars, right? The ATFW or whatever it is, right?
ATFW, yeah.
Oh my God! All right. Cat's out of the bag, Joan. If you go back there again, they might be all taken. All right, Bob, your 3-day weekend. What does that look like?
Well, that's. There are so many places you can go, as Joan says, Guadalajara, although she's not the driver, so she doesn't know how stressful that drive can be. It's just a difficult drive. In a bus, it's easy. You just sit back and relax. But in driving, especially between here and a town called Compostela, you have to go up through a big mountain range. And it's tight hairpin curves and turns, and buses and trucks go slow as they go up the grade. But the good news is the government is about to open a brand new highway that's going to eliminate that section. A lot of the route from Compostela to Guadalajara is a brand new highway, but this first 2 hours is getting to that new section. So that's hard. But so we love to go to Guadalajara. We have family in Guadalajara. We also love going to an area north of here Sayulita, which is not my favorite town. For some people, they absolutely love Sayulita. Or the town just to the north of it called San Pancho, which is short for San Francisco. And there are some really lovely hotels to stay. And it's just a great place to relax. Take a lot of time to spend in the swimming pools, and great places to eat, either in town or right on the beach. So I vote San Pancho for a wonderful getaway. And even the day trips like San Sebastian is a marvelous place to stay, too. A place, if you want to stay in a fabulous boutique hotel that's called Casa Nogal. It's incredible.
And this is up in San Sebastian?
Yes, with a gourmet restaurant attached. And you can look out to the hillsides covered with agave plants. And agave is what they make tequila out of.
You mentioned Sayulita. I remember, 20 years ago, I thought Sayulita was great. It was, the beaches were peaceful, very few people. Now, you go out there and to me, you got all the surfers, it's crowded. It's just nothing like it used to be. And I remember when we went there, it was basically a dirt road getting to the plaza, and it was nice. But I'm not fond of Sayulita anymore. But San Pancho, yes, I love.
Yeah, and San Pancho also has a barracuda.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, they got barracuda number 3 over there, I think.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you, I love the barracuda more out in Punta de Mita. Now, I don't mind this one near here, but the one I thought the food was excellent.
Yeah.
Well, good, because I'm going to be eating it tomorrow.
If you had a word of advice for a first-time traveler coming to Puerto Vallarta, what would that be, Joan?
Let me think. I would say have a very open mind, especially coming from the States, because when you come down here, you're in a foreign country, and there's certain different rules of the game, if you will. So be open. When sometimes a Mexican person says, "I'll do that mañana," that doesn't necessarily mean mañana, but it will happen eventually. And I just say be open-minded, because it's really a lovely place to be, and the Mexicans are very, very charming people. As a matter of fact, I think the most, shall I say, gallant or chivalrous men I've ever met have been here in Mexico. They're fabulous.
How about you, Bob? Any words of advice for a first-timer?
I'd say just be open. Be open to a new culture. There are so many people that come to places like Puerto Vallarta, and they will stay at an all-inclusive hotel, and they will eat all their meals at the inclusive hotel when they are maybe a half-hour ride in a taxi to come into the real Puerto Vallarta. And I think it's such a shame when people don't get to experience the reality of Mexico. When I told you that we had played Acapulco way back in 1971, we were too dumb and naive and green to know that we should have asked our booking agent for airplane tickets for the band and transport for all our equipment. What did we do? We went out and bought a truck. But guess what? We drove from Nogales all the way through on all the old highways.
Wow.
I talked about switchback roads, and we literally drove day and night to get to Puerto Vallarta. And we were so frightened of eating the food or drinking the water that when we finally did in Mazatlan, we stopped in Mazatlan, and we had lunch there, and we had like real hamburgers and Coca-Colas and French fries, and we ran out to the surf and played in the beach. I mean, when we did that, something switched in my brain to say, oh, this is Mexico, as opposed to eating white bread because we bought nothing but loaves of bread and bottles of water, just listening to silly advice. But, Mexico, for many people, is a love affair. And I certainly have a love affair with Mexico.
What about, while you've got the mic in your hand, what about a word of warning? Got any words of warning for a first-time visitor?
I'd say like within any city, walking around at night, if you've been drinking in a bar, call a cab to take you back to your place. Because if you are on the streets and you are wavering, wobbling, and you're not walking with a firm step, people can take advantage of you, and the police here can take advantage of you, the tourist police. So just be wise, and if you want to go out and party, just call a cab. It makes it so much easier. You won't have any problems. You won't lose a wallet. You won't lose jewelry. And, really bad things don't happen. But, if you want to avoid that kind of stuff, just be a smart traveler.
How about for gay men, first-time visitors, and words of advice?
For gay men, it's the same. And gay men tend to party a little harder than the straight community. So especially this warning for gay men. I remember once, years and years ago in the 80s or early 90s, I was walking home from a bar, and the tourist police in their white outfits stopped me. And, they were searching me, probably looking for drugs. And I don't do drugs. And so they didn't find anything. They came up short. And they let me go on my way. But, they could have taken my money. They didn't. But, just be careful. Just take a cab. Don't be stupid. So that's what I would say to gay men. Other than that, this is such a beautiful place to come as a gay man, because it is a culture... the culture of gay Mexico with gay Mexican men and men from all over Latin America come to Puerto Vallarta. You can have just a wonderful time. And a little word of warning, if they're a lot younger than you, because sometimes the older guys like to go with the younger men. The younger men can be in it to see what they can get. And you just have to, as an older gay man, you have to be careful. Just use your head. Don't do stupid things that you wouldn't do if you were in your own home.
Excellent. Thank you. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, I was saying, to straight people and straight women, this is a wonderful place to come, even if you're straight. We have a large gay population, but it's a beautiful place to be, no matter who you are. And single ladies, yes, there are straight American men of every color, size, shape, and country.
But we don't have an American Legion Hall here where you can get food and meet the old farts.
That's a shame. They got to work on that. Obviously, that's what they need. That's what they need.
Yeah, you can always go to Longostinos. That's where a lot of the guys hang out.
Ba-dum-bum. There we go. All right, let's get back to the show. Tell us when you perform, where you perform, what days, and all that stuff.
Yeah, we're at Incanto, which is on Insurgentes, and we're there every Friday for the cocktail hour from 5 until 7.
And Bob, do you have anything you want to say? Is there something that I left out? Anyone anything to add?
There's no cover charge for our show. There's no cover charge. And the cool thing about it, folks all around the world can tune in and watch our show on the video feed. So if you want to see us, go to Facebook and type in Incanto, Incanto, Vallarta, Vallarta. And then when the page opens up, click on videos. And if you go to 5 p.m. Central Time, that would be United States or Mexico, you will see our show and you'll see our performance. And you're welcome to say hi to us, because as Joan's singing, I've got my phone on the piano and I'm looking at what folks are saying to us. And sometimes people request songs from over video.
Really?
And so I keep my iPad handy so I can look up a song really quick. So it's very interactive and a lot of fun.
And you can almost pretend like you're in Puerto Vallarta at the same time, right?
Exactly. And we love tips. We sing. We sing for tips,
You sing for
but
tips.
otherwise we just sing for your smile and satisfaction
Excellent. All
and
right.
dog food.
People are so overwhelmed with you, Joan, they can't help but open their wallet.
Oh man, I love that. Well, I'll have a link to the Encanto Facebook page in the show notes, and I will also have pictures of Joan and Bob performing. I will also have a little YouTube video embedded in there, so you can listen to them, banter about, have a little fun doing that too. And I just want to thank you both so much for allowing me, Bob, in your home, and Joan
Thank
for
you.
allowing me to introduce both you and Bob to my audience. I truly appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. We really do appreciate it. And it's been a pleasure to meet you, Barry. You're just like a fresh breeze blowing into
Yeah.
town.
Ah, you're just saying that. All right. Thank you so much, Bob. Thank you so much, Joan. I have pictures of these two lovely individuals. You'll find them in the show notes. I embedded some videos of them entertaining the crowd over at Incanto. You can find that too. I have links that will keep you informed as to when they're performing. And Bob told me that they plan to start up again around November, the 1st of November, he says, and October is their Learn New Music Month, he says. So you're going to find all that over at www.puertovallartatravelshow.com. Remember, next time you're in Puerto Vallarta, to check out the Joan Huston Show with Bob Bruneau. All right, well, that should do it for today. Next week, I hope to get an interview out to you. I'll try while I'm in Puerto Vallarta. But anyway, stay tuned for more on-the-ground reports from Puerto Vallarta, Mexico, with travel tips, great restaurant excursion ideas, and more. But until then, remember that this is an interactive show where I depend on your questions and your suggestions about all things Puerto Vallarta. If you think of something that I should be talking about, please reach out to me by clicking on the Contact Us tab and sending us your message. And remember, if you're considering booking any type of tour while you're in Puerto Vallarta, you must go to vallartainfo.com. That's JR's website. Reserve your tour through him right from his website. Remember, this is a value-for-value proposition. His experience and on-the-ground knowledge of everything Puerto Vallarta in exchange for you're making a purchase of a tour that you would do anyway. You're just doing it through him as a way of saying thank you. Thanks, JR, for being our guide. It costs no more than if you're going to use someone else, so just do it, really. And when you do take one of these tours, email me about your experiences. Maybe you can come on board and share with others what you liked or didn't like about the tour. Again, contact me by clicking on the Contact Us tab and sending off a message. And don't forget his maps, his DIY tours, his revitalized happy hour board, and more. And I have all those links to that in the show notes. And once again, if you like this podcast, take the time, subscribe and follow, or whatever you do over there. Better yet, share with a lover of Puerto Vallarta. Give me a good review wherever you happen to be listening. That way we can get the word out to more and more people about the magic of this place, Puerto Vallarta, Mexico. And remember, I made it easy for you to do just that with each episode I create. But if you haven't been to my website, you really need to have a look there. I have the links to the places that we talk about, interesting pictures and more, right there in my blog posts and in the show notes for each episode of the show. So check them out for sure if you haven't already. All right? All right. Don't forget the meet and greet coming up this Wednesday, 17th of August, over at Restaurant San Lucas. Go over to the show notes to find out how to get there. And hey, thank you, Joan Huston and Bob Bruneau of the Joan Huston Show over at Incanto. Catch all the important links in the show notes. I have links and pictures and maps, of course, that can take all of you to all of that information right there at www.puertovallartatravelshow.com. And thanks to all of you for listening all the way through this episode of the Puerto Vallarta Travel Show. This is Barry Kessler signing off with a wish for all of you to slow down, be kind, and live Vallarta lifestyle. Nos vemos, amigos.
de Puerto Vallarta, noche de arrullo en el mar, samba de Puerto Vallarta, solo camino eterno por la playa. Me encuentro junto al río cuando todo está en calma. De pronto cae la noche, me brillas Puerto Vallarta. Samba de Puerto Vallarta. Noche de arrullo en el mar. Samba de Puerto Vallarta. Noche de amor junto al mar. Samba de Puerto Vallarta.